This meeting is being live streamed. Got
Yes.
it. Meeting is being live streamed. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start in a minute or so. So just hold on for a second. I'm just allowing everyone to join. Okay. And I'm going to ask you guys, if possible, won't you just enable your cameras? It's always good to see a friendly face when we are sharing really valuable information with you, like we are going to be today. Okay. So before I introduce you to Kobus, who's going to be running the session for us today, what we are doing is we are kicking off a whole series of webinars starting today to promote the most important event of 2024, which will be the ACRE28 conference. And if I share my screen very quickly, there is a website that we've prepared for you guys. And you can actually go out there and find out everything about this wonderful conference that we will have between the 5th to the 8th of March, 2024 at Klein Kariba in Bella Bella. What is really important is there's an early bird price of 8,500 Rand, which is only valid until the 30th of November, 2023. And should you book and pay before the 30th of November 2023, there will also be early bird bonuses that you'll get invited to, that people after that 30th of November won't get access to. So go to our website. It's very simple, acreconference.com, and you can actually go and have a look at everything on offer there. We are in the process of taking the session proposals from our clients, from our future presenters, and what they are going to be doing is those are going to be coming in the next few weeks, and we will put all the presenters and their sessions on the website for you. But Lee Kitchen, the magical dude, he's definitely going to be there. Lee has been working with Disney for over 30 years. We're bringing in Leo Muniz from Chile. He's the director of ThinkX Chile, and we also bring in Cora Robinson from the UK, and that is just the start of a long list of really great presenters that we are inviting for you guys next year for ACRE 2028. If you also go and have a look at the sessions, what we will be doing is there's going to be a number of these webinars over the next few weeks. And we will post the pre-ACRE 28 events and webinars on this page, and we'll keep you up to date with the newsletters along the way. But at any point in time, if you wanted to just check in about sessions that's happening in the next month or 2 or 3, and these sessions will be running all the way through to March next year. And if you want to sort of attend these mostly free sessions, apart from the early bird sessions, you can always come to this page. We've also compiled for you a number of resources that you can access. There's a number of articles that sort of digs into why creativity is important for specifically entrepreneurs, business people, and educators. And we've also got some links to some really great creativity techniques out there. And then we've also added some interesting links, which is just links from the World Economic Forum, looking into the future and looking at what are going to be the most important skills in the future. And of course, since I'm showing this to you, you'll immediately know that creativity is right up there as one of the most important skills for the future. And then there's a creativity feed, which will change almost on a daily basis. It's just a feed of creativity articles that is curated by myself, and you might find some inspiration there. Just going back to the main page of the conference, if you click through to the main page, all of the information that you need to book is here. And if you need more information, just click on that little black button and make contact with us, and we will send you all of the information that you need to book for the conference next year. With regards to Kobus, Kobus is going to talk to us today about courage and creativity. And it is an interesting topic. And I'm not going to spend any time on it. I've asked Kobus to spend as much time as he like on talking about creativity within the constraints of the time we have available today. But the format's going to be Kobus is going to start. He's going to give you some content, and then we're going to have space for a Q&A afterwards. And I suggest you either in the chat post send some questions to me, or we'll bring you live and you can ask a question directly to Kobus. About Kobus, what can we say about Kobus? He's the founder of ACRE in South Africa. And if I had to go through his bio, I could keep you busy for almost as long as he's going to use time to spend with you on courage. So without much more ado, I'm going to hand over to Kobus. And Kobus, thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me put it on share screen, maybe immediately. Are we on shared screen, Francois? Doesn't look like it.
I don't see the share. If you just click on the little green, button.
On this side.
Yeah. Can you see the share screen, Kobus?
It says that you, as the host, disabled my screen sharing. And I thought you liked me, Francois, but
yeah. Okay. Try again, Kobus. There we go.
Okay, let's try again. Still not working. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you. I think Etienne said about 320 people registered will be watching on different platforms. Yeah, and thank you to Francois. He's really been like the center of all the organizing of ACRE at the moment, and also these webinars that presenting is doing an incredible job. So Francois, thank you very much. Thank you also to Etienne. Yeah, what I thought what I'd do this afternoon, just share a couple of ideas with you, quoting a number of well-known people, quotes on courage. And then, yeah, and for you to just think about it, because my creativity journey and my courage journey kind of started at the same time. Alan, who's also Paul Torrens' student, will support this, because from the beginning, if you are going on this journey, your creativity journey, it's also a courage journey. Because if your creativity will not happen, will not work for you, if you don't have the courage to make it work. It's as simple as that. So over the years, and more than 30 years, I've actually seen this happen. Wonderful, creative people out there, the thousands of people that I've met all over the world, all the creativity they've got, they've scored 10 out of 10 for creativity, but their creativity doesn't happen. And that leaves you very frustrated, sort of often irritated with yourself. And it's often because there's the lack of courage. You did not develop your courage as you developed your creativity. So this is crucial. And it was crucial in my own journey too. So let me just start off by sharing a couple of quotes with you. And yeah, by the way, interesting with the Torrens, his mentor, Rollo May, was a courage fundi in the 1960s and 70s. And it was actually a mentor of Paul Torrens. So his journey also was entwined with Paul Torrens' journey with courage. So he started to encourage me also in South Africa, difficult times there. in the 1980s and in the 90s, exciting times actually. And it was during the 90s then that I was asked to write a television series on courage, and I called with Rashay. Rashay, of course, assisted me, and we wrote the 24 episode series called The Courage to Shake Hands with Tomorrow. And it also wrote a couple of books on courage where we unpacked different kinds of courage. Actually, that series focused on 24 different kinds of courage, but you're repacking it maybe then in 6 sort of major categories of courage. And I'll just also allude to that a little bit later on. So let me move on. Talk a little about the essence of courage. I want to ask you, what do you think is the essence? What does courage mean to you? What is that essence you need to understand about courage? So let me just sort of quote a few well-known people and try to understand what they're trying to say. Madeline Ferguson, who said, it's the time when you have to let go of one trapeze with the faith that the new trapeze is on its way. That's for me, it's always been a very powerful quote. Because working in organizations and business and sport education, I often found that you have people trying newness, trying to change, different strategies in an organization, different tactics in a rugby tournament or whatever, but they're still trying to hang on to yesterday. So you're trying to hang on to yesterday while trying to grab tomorrow. It's not going to work. And it doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that. You can become confused. I've seen players on an international sports field becoming completely confused when they're trying new stuff, but the old is still up in their mind. So if you go for the new, you go for the new. And you have the courage to know that that new trapeze will be there. This is a very powerful quote. If you look at your own life often, that trying to also change what you're doing, trying to change your life, often you just can't let go. You know, you can't let go. You want to move, but you can't let go. Second quote, of the famous quote by Nelson Mandela said, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. This is crucial to understand the essence of courage. It's not about not being afraid. It's just not that. But it's just crossing fear, crossing the fear. And it's interesting that in the more than 30 years that I've been involved in this, and also the research and trying to understand and having been absorbed very, very, very courageous people, is that I've not come across a fear that you cannot cross. There's not one fear that in all the years that I've been involved in this that you can't conquer. You get across that fear. Jack Canfield had all same kind of quote. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. And I think if you had to make a list of your own fears, and I'll come to that a little bit later, it's not so easy. If you ask someone to write down your fears, it's not easy. What exactly are you afraid of? What exactly are you afraid of? What actually keeps you back? What is that fear to write it down then, to get clarity about it? Because I have also always found clarity if you're able to just put it down on a piece of paper and then work around that. And this other quote, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. This is very important. This is very important. It's not this boom kind of thing. Often it's these small little steps you take in overcoming your fears, small little steps that you take till eventually you get there. So it's not only often always a one leap to cross the fear, it's often these smaller steps to cross your fears. And of course, this is an important one, especially in the South African context. The quote Timothy Lewis said, the brave don't live forever, but the cautious don't live at all. It's very, very, for me, a very precious quote. A very precious quote. To always be versigtig, not giving the first step, staying in your comfort kind of zone, not moving. You don't live. That's not life. Not supposed to be that way. You see that in the 7 years or so that I did research on these young children from 0 to 3, exactly that. All the indications of courage and braveness was there in these little kids of 10 months or whatever, trying to get to the edges, moving out. It's in our makeup to go for the edges here. And it's very interesting. When I got closer to these two people, when Nelson Mandela became the president, and I was asked to train the staff, was that I found that there was the courage culture was already there, established. And with F.W. Clerk also walked a little bit, a few miles with him in a sense. And I remember when I had that live TV show for a few years, he was one of my guests. And I asked him this question: when you gave that speech in 1990, February 1990, that changed South Africa forever, what do you think was the most important quality that you had? And without a doubt, he said, courage. I would never have done it if I didn't have the courage to do it. Because he said, I knew immediately that after giving that talk, there will be knives in my back. I will be destroyed. I would experience hatred, and it's happened, of course, from all over. You see, so to change the world too, I think without courage, it's just not possible. Both these leaders, especially Nelson Mandela, courageous his whole life. And this is maybe the point of departure of courage, the words of Churchill, who said, courage is rightly esteemed the first of human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees all others. It guarantees all others. Let me say it again. It guarantees all others. I've told this story many, many times when my two sons were their last year of high school, when I was asked to give a talk to the staff. I ended off by saying, when my sons leave the school here at the end of the year, the first quality I would like to have seen you instill in them is courage, because I'd like them to leave here courageous young men, not hesitate to grab life and to grab the world out there. Courage number one for me. And I was never invited back because they wanted me to put knowledge or something else there in the top of it. To me, it's courage the first. It guarantees all the other qualities. And of course, there's then this famous quote. Alan will also remember this. I was actually in his class when he said, this is then linked directly to creativity. This very, very famous quote of Paul Thomas: creative people can perform miracles, but they are always in danger of crucifixion. Last night, I had dinner with a minister religious in the religion, and we actually talked about this quote. And he says it's right in the middle of the center of religion. He said this quote: creative people can perform miracles, but they are always in danger of crucifixion. Let this kind of sink in, because what it says is every time you try something new, every time you change the status quo, there will always be people out there that will try to destroy you, always. I remember coming back to South Africa after my studies in US, even here in my local community of the church, I was actually crucified because you came with new ideas and whatever. People didn't like it. But the Stoner says, keep on, be comfortable with crucifixion. If you're in the creativity business, be comfortable with crucifixion. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Be comfortable with crucifixion. Let me just briefly, then I'll talk about the different kinds of courage, and think about how do you see it? How do you, if you had to define creative courage, what does it mean to you? Let me put them all up there. In emotional courage, what would emotional courage mean? And then moral courage, spiritual courage, social courage, and physical courage. Just think about think of examples of these, let's call it courages, different kinds of courage. I'd like to, let me just sort of think, and then I'll put it on the screen, very brief explanations of these courages. As I said, Francois is very strict with time. I really can't go over my time. I'll get a little tap on my shoulder if I do. Let's just talk about creative courage then. The willingness to pursue new forms, new symbols, new patterns of truth with all the risks involved. It's when we begin to trust the richness of our own capacity that you don't doubt yourself. Truly successful people out there, they don't doubt their capacity. They don't doubt it. Thirdly, is when we start marching to the beat of our own drum. It's often when we in our parenting training sessions, it's often this, that the parents often want the children to march to the parents' drum. It's when we start marching to the beat of our own drum. That's when you begin to understand your own passions too. Passion starts when you start to understand marching to the beat of your own drum. Emotional qualities, very critical kind of courage. A willingness to travel outside your comfort zones, to explore the space that is unfamiliar. It goes wide, to deep and wide as possible, to uproot the sources of your fears. This is also a very important one. To leave our safe moorings. To leave our safe moorings. This is critical because I've often in the past, when I was asked to travel to different countries where many South Africans live, I was asked to give talks to South African in these different clusters in the Landtown of Toronto, all over London and whatever. And I often find that what was lacking is emotional courage. To leave your safe moorings, you need this courageous emotions, to be emotionally courageous. Otherwise, you will be overwhelmed. It's a very critical part of emotional courage. And then not to try to make everything that is uncertain, certain. I kind of believe that, you know, it's unpredictable out there, it's uncertain out there. So don't always try to be certain, you know, be okay with uncertainty. Be comfortable with uncertainty. And then to cry without embarrassment. To cry without embarrassment. And in our times that we live in, I think maybe it's something that lacks more than anything else is moral courage. To do the right thing, even if it means ridicule, rejection, inconvenience. That's moral courage. To keep on doing the right thing. To resist apathy, anger, complacency. To hold on to your values in spite of. First choose and act, then morally. And sorry, let's go back to the last one. The willingness to choose differently. Torrens's words, I also remember, he had these brilliant quotes. And moral courage, he said, it's that to be okay. To be okay to be a minority of one. To be okay to be a minority of one. If you're in a group of people and you know what, in a party or wherever, and they come up with, you know, with whatever, and you know it's wrong, to have the courage to go to them and say, you know, you're wrong. This is not my value system, you're wrong. Don't do it, whatever. And we often don't do it. We just let it slip. I think this is probably the best times in our lives to show moral courage now in 2023. So I'd like to share a story with you with social courage. I think social courage is something that should be developed at a very early age. And the moment you develop at an early age, it kind of stays with you forever. It's that kind of comfortable to enter a people space, even if you're not a people's person. Because if you don't develop it early, it's always kind of difficult to do that. Let me give you a kind of an example. When I was probably 12 years old or so, I remember I just couldn't get up and recite or get up and tell a story in the class. I couldn't do it. I always sort of started shaking. And then in grade 7, those years, standard 5, I remember when I did that, a teacher by the name of Miss Pickard came and she put her hand on my shoulder. And it was amazing. And then I kind of started, that taught me in a sense that courage rubs off. And then I felt this energy and this okayness to get up and recite. And nearly that whole year, every time she just put her hand on my shoulder, and then later on, it wasn't necessary anymore. And for me, it was unreal because I knew that I didn't know the concept social courage, but I knew I had it. And I set as a goal, when I get to the end of my school, high school, I want to be the chairman of the debating society. And I became that. That was a goal, because it was it. And later years and talking and getting up and giving talks and whatever, I always felt I had that social courage. You see, often when as the older you get, you say to yourself, geez, you know, I like to get up and give a talk and what. You see, with social courage, I think the ability to impact on people is so much greater. And ask yourself and to write it down then. If you don't have the social courage, what are you afraid of? I've told the story many times. Often I get parents that bring their children to me. And then there's a lack of social courage without using the terminology. And I would ask, like a couple of months ago, this this mother brought this 10-year-old girl to me. Her name was Sonia, I think. And she said, she does wonderfully well at school. But when it's like state footed, she wants to get up on the stage and recite. She can't do it. She just feels. And so I sit down and I say, what are you afraid of? I like to write down what you're afraid of. And then it sort of comes out and whatever. And we start writing down a couple of things, what you're afraid of. And the same thing with a hand on the shoulder. 2 weeks later, she's on stage and she recites and she's passion on the stage. And it's a skill and an empowerment that will never, ever leave her. So this is a very, very important, this social courage, because it has to do with your communication, your reaching other people, influencing other people. It's got a lot to do with your social courage. A lack of social courage, and it impairs you. It impairs your influence on other people. Spiritual courage is maybe the most difficult one to explain. It's a complex kind of stuff, but let me just put this on screen first. Let me see if the last. To me, the last, it's when you are in that special state of flow, which brings extraordinary solutions. I kind of think spiritual courage eventually means that you go beyond thinking. You actually go beyond emotions in the state of flow, in this unconscious competence sort of mode, where there's just serenity in you. And is this when I believe you really do have an impact on other people? This is when you have this kind of an impact on people that they don't forget you. They can't think why, but they don't forget you because you've left a mark on them in some kind of way. It's that, they always say, when you think of a teacher of 20, 30 years ago, you can't even remember what the teacher taught, but you remember the teacher, because what you remember about that teacher is the human beingness of the teacher. And to me, that human beingness, in a sense, is that spiritual courage. That is what you remember of people. That is what you remember of iconic people. Look at the Nelson Mandelas of this world. There's something in it, and that's a spiritual. You go beyond the conscious. And I think I've shared this story many, many times to a friend of mine who was a CEO a big company here in Johannesburg. And he started to climb mountains at the age of 40. I've shared the story, but maybe to those who have not heard the story. And every year he climbed a higher mountain. When he was 48, he attempted Everest. And he shared the story with me. He said it was the last day. It was a beautiful day, and he could have reached the top of Everest. Everything went wonderfully well, that whole climb to the top. The last day was a beautiful day. But the moment that when he woke up there, he had this fear that paralyzed him. Paralyzed him. You see, you have to cross a fear to get to your top, to get to the top of your mountain. You've got to cross a fear. And he couldn't. And he went back heartbroken, confused why he did not get to the top. When he came back, I sat with him, we sat and we talked and we shared and we looked at it and tried to get to the essence of this, because you have to get to the essence, otherwise you can't get to the solution. Try to dig deeper with him. And then it became clear. So what he shared with me was that apparently if you climb Everest, somewhere along the line, you've got to fill in many forms and whatever. And one of those forms, somewhere they ask you the question, what should we do with your body? which actually said, you're probably going to die on the trip, and what should we do? And then he said that, boom, came into his mind that last morning when he woke up. And he froze. The next year he went again. But he crossed that fear. Long before he climbed Everest, that fear was gone. There was a serenity in him. It was a state of flow in him. The sort of unconscious confidence he had. And he got to the top of Everest, and I have a beautiful picture of him. Beautiful picture of him with the South African flag. See, crossing that fear. It's that state of flow, that when... What I did was also try to those who know the brain, to package the courage into these 4 quadrants. I didn't have the time to do it in the 8 dimensions. I'll still do that. It'll take some time, but I'll do that. Just have a look at these 4 quadrants. Have a look at it, and in a sense, score yourself in each quadrant where you are okay, where you say, gee, I've got that. That is my courage. Where you have probably more than 8 out of 10, somewhere there. But also those that you say, she's probably below 4 out of 10. Have a look quickly, and then maybe you can send Francois a little bit of feedback here, so we get an idea of where's the courage dominances here. Is it L1 courage? Are you all there? We say, no, geez, whoa. Or maybe L2, where are you, up or down? It'll be a nice little research for us to go and dig a little bit deeper of where. Just have a look quickly, and maybe...
Kobus, maybe for anyone that doesn't know your brain instrument, can you just give them a brief summary of what R1, R2, L1, and L2 is?
You know, Francois, you've given me so little time, and now you want me still to elaborate on something else. The L1 is the 2 dimensions. There is the sort of realist and analyst. It's the concrete part of your brain, the factual part of the brain, the evaluation part of the brain, concrete, clinical kind of way of looking at things. The L2 is the process brain, which means it's the step-by-step kind of brain, the more the safety-first kind of brain, you have the persevere sort of brain, the dependable kind of brain, not take a lot of chances in the L2. The R2 at the bottom here is the people's brain, where you link with, you get your energy from people, feeding people. You would like to be in a people's world, in a job where you're surrounded by people, interacting, communicating with people. And the top, the R1, that's the brain that doesn't like routine. It's the way out kind of brain. It's not the routine kind of brain. So that in 2 seconds, normally what takes 2 days, but I think they'll be okay with that, Francois. So have a look at quickly, and then, as I say, score yourself, and then maybe if you can get the results back to Francois, and then we'll look at it at some stage. Okay, let's move on. Oh, let's quickly, I'm not going to elaborate on this. Is this when we do our training, creativity training, we start with what is ordinary, what is still ordinary in creativity? How do you move more from a problem-orientated kind of look at life to a more opportunity, and then the possibility world? And to cross these zones, you can see every time there's this fear that you need to cross. And again, identify these fears and cross them. Otherwise, you will not cross them. You'll stay ordinary. You stay sort of a problem-oriented kind of group or organization or person. Just quickly, that what I've learned, and people have been in the courage world and the courage sciences. This is what you kind of see. Courageous people are those who are, they're kind of okay, their inner lives, and that's sort of self-mastery thing. Courageous people don't run away from problems, they confront them. People make the people, and this is really important too. It's like with passion too, what we found, and with creativity too. The more you live this courage, remember, courage, creativity, mostly starts with the doing of it. You do creativity and you do courage, but more by the sort of keep on doing it, you become that. And then it starts to rub off on people. They can see it, they feel it when they're close to you. Stand for what is right, new, different, inspire others people to do the same. Yeah, this is what I just said. They don't only talk the courage, they really do it, they live it. They become it. You know, I've said to so many organizations and groups, if your image is courageous as an organization, people like to be close to you. They like to link to courageous people. They like to link to courageous teams. So I've seen this in education as well. It's that kind of, they see it in you. They want to be close to you. So it should be part of your brand. Your brand should be, in a sense, be courageous. It should be something courage in your brand. And again, courageous people are not afraid to make their creativity. That's obvious, actually. Doing the right things, yeah. It's also kind of important to really, courageous or not, they're not envious people. Courageous people I've come across all over, they're not envious. They like people around them to also do well, support people around them, adults, children. Actually, you often feel more proud of the achievements around you than of your own achievements. That's courageousness. I just put this up on the screen, not to share kind of stories, because I think you all have courage stories. As I said, with Torrance being our mentor, there are hundreds of Torrance stories, courage stories that one can share. But you know, interesting enough, this morning or yesterday or past 2 days, two well-known people in South Africa died. If you're South African, you would know them. Derek Watts, I knew him well years ago, very well, incredible human being, an incredible person, wonderful, joyful person. But the one thing I remember about Derek Watts, as a foremost presenter, but as a journalist, his courageousness, his courage. He entered any space to confront people. He didn't hesitate. So I remember Derek Watts. This is my story about Derek Watts. He's a courageous person. That sticks with me. That's my story about Derek. And this morning, another well-known South African died. He died actually was in a car crash 2 days ago. Tiaan Stoffberg. He was a South African rugby player, also captain South Africa well. But apart from being a courageous rugby player, that's not what I remember of Tiaan Stoffberg. He was a stutterer. He was a stutterer and just kind of a captain of a South African team, and you've got to talk and share. He never hesitated to do that. He didn't shun back and say, please, let someone else do it for me. He did it. That's what I remember about Tiaan Stoffberg, the courageous Tiaan Stoffberg. And so I can carry on. A week or so ago, a friend of mine phoned me, Charlie, also an ex-Western Province player, but he was a CEO of a big company in South Africa, huge company. And he phoned me and he said, one evening, and he said, I haven't heard from him in years and years. He said, I've been reading this little courage post. It comes from one of our books that Etienne put up there on LinkedIn. He said, I've been reading it. And he said, I was in Malaysia now a couple of weeks ago. And my fear that I thought I could never overcome was heights. But you know what I did in Malaysia after reading and absorbing all these courage stories? I went up in the air as a paraglider, right up there. And once I was there, the fear just started to disappear. I crossed my fear, he said. I crossed my fear. I just went out and I did it. You see, and I think all of you have your courage stories. Maybe think about your courage stories. Think about maybe your children, yourself, where you can actually link a courage story to yourself. I think it's very important to do so. And maybe at one stage we can collect all these courage stories. There are hundreds of them out there, thousands. To collect our own courage stories, very powerful courage stories. A little bit here too, at the end, I'd just like to share, developing your courage. First of all, is to understand the essence of your fear. What really scares you? And there are many techniques you can try. I always say, start off with the 5 whys as a technique to get to the essence. If you don't immediately know what the essence of your fear, ask you, what are you afraid of? And then again, why, and then why. And after the 5th why, you probably will get to the essence of your fear. What scares you? If I were to ask you that question, you had to respond, what scares you? Why? And when you answer me, I'll ask again, why? And then again, why? And then confront fear, as Charles did, going up in Malaysia as a paraglider, and just do it. Sometimes you just got to confront it and do it. Cross that fear. Do it. And this courage self-talk is of vital importance. Again, I was, and you know, people who've been trained and taught by Paul Thomas will always refer back to him. Ask Alan, we never stopped talking about him. He was the most precious person that ever crossed, trainer, a person that crossed our lives. It's amazing. He couldn't drive a car. He was a dyslexic. So I drove him for years. I was his driver. And he taught me to encourage self-talk while driving a car. Talk to yourself, encourage yourself. Those years, you know, without cell phones, people thought you were mad when you saw this talking person driving a car. Now, you might be talking on a cell phone. So talk to yourself. The self-talk is of critical importance. Boost yourself all the time, alone somewhere. Positive, courageous self-talk. And make it a habit. You see, by making it a habit, this courage stuff that you do, make it a habit, then doing becomes being. And that's where you want to be. You want to stop doing it and being it. Ask all the great sportsmen in the world. Ask some of these incredible young rugby players. Ask Messi. Ask the great soccer players. For them, it stopped doing years ago. It's in the being. You can't be super in that if it's a doing thing. Ask the great golfers of the world. It's a being thing. But it can only be a being thing if you are relentless and you keep on going. Then it can be a being thing. Don't stop too early. Don't stop too early. And then associate with a courage mentor, friend, colleague. And I'm very, very grateful that I have so many of them. I still have so many of them. Maybe starting with Miss Picard a million years ago with a hand on my shoulder. Associate with them. They're around you. Spend time with them. Because it rubs off. Spend time with them. So this is my last slide. And then Francois will take over. He's the boss. So he'll take over. So you've seen this. Revisit your courage. It's when you stayed when it would have been much easier to leave. You left when it would have been much easier to stay. You asked for help when it would have been much easier to pretend everything is okay. My friends, thank you so much for watching and listening today. Let's keep on talking courage. We need it in 2023. We need it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Francois.
Okay. Thanks, Kobus. Can you stop sharing? Thank you very much.
I stopped sharing immediately because, you know, I listen to you, Francois, you know. I really listen to you.
No, thank you, Kobus. That's very interesting. You know, this we sometimes when we are faced with a situation where we need the courage to act, we think it's something that's unique to us in that moment. But if you go and read across the centuries, the philosophers, the great poets, all of them contemplated this. There's the famous Persian poet Rumi. He said in one of his poems, "Heart, be brave. If you cannot be brave, just go." Which is, I think, an ancient way of saying what you just said about just do it. And I don't know why that makes me think of shoes, but there's a specific sports shoe company that's built a whole brand around that statement, just do it. And one of the things that just came up for me, well, before I share that, I'm going to hope that some of our participants here have the courage to ask a good question today. So this is maybe the first start of building your own courage, is to just ask a question in the chat. But the thing that came to me while you were talking, Kobus, is that when you look at a great success, people are tempted to look only at the wonderful things of that success. But if you deeply reflect on that success, you will see inside of there's a big chunk of failure.
Mm.
And the first
Oh, yeah.
question that I want to ask you is, what do you believe the relationship is between that fear of failure and our reluctance to be courageous?
Asking to the audience,
I'm asking you.
asking me. I failed many, 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 many times. When I often think about developing all these brain instruments, and it takes a very long time to develop a new one. And very often halfway, I've actually seen fail. I've got it completely wrong. And if I saw that as a failure, then I won't continue. I just saw that as part of the journey, is not to succeed, and then carry on. You've got to do, you can't see that as a failure. It may be failure in the broader definition of the word, but it's just part, for me, it's been part of the journey. Many times, in the old definition, I've actually failed. But as I say, you've got to be relentless. And I come back to this all the time. You've got to be relentless to get to the being state. You've got to just keep on with falling down, getting up, but get to that state. But when you're in that being state, it's just totally different way of existing, in a sense. It's just completely and absolutely. There's just this flow, and all the studies on the state of flow, Setsume and all they've done, is that the question always comes: why are you so seldom in that state of flow? Why is it that now you can recall now and again when you were there and you woke up in the morning, you wanted to grab life, but then it goes away again, Because I think it's that you go back to the doing part and away from the being part again. So yeah, failure is part of it. Part of creativity is part of it, part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Maybe just to sort of share my perspective on that as well, that we get conditioned as young children not to do things wrong. And I think after a while, we sort of go into the habit of being scared of doing something wrong. And often, as adults, when we don't have the courage to act, it doesn't occur to us that this lack of courage to act is actually traced back to something that happened to you when you were 3-4 years old. And Tracy Lee had an observation in the chat. She says, one of the things that contributes to our fear of failure is imposter syndrome. What's your feelings on that, Kobus?
Sorry, just say it, what Tracy said. She says
that imposter syndrome is something that contributes to our fear of failure.
I'm sorry, didn't get that call.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. It's when we feel we're not good enough.
Let me go back to that, because I want to link to what you said earlier, that in the research on, between 3 and 10 is where this sort of creativity, this downward spiral starts. And it's in that sort of stage when you believe success to be something else than what it is, and you start to doubt yourself. When you believe that you can give an answer that is kind of unique, but it doesn't fit in with the education answer, and you start to doubt yourself. And I go back to the book that we wrote a couple of years ago. We've actually rewritten the book, Am I Clever or Am I Stupid? It's exactly that. You start to doubt yourself when, as I say, you get 10 out of 20 for the capitals of Europe, and who cares in any way, but you start that, you average, and you start doubting it, and it's perpetuated by everything around you. And again, as we all know, then you start to do, say, emulate the teacher and give the teacher what the teacher wants to, and so on. And so when that 98% or whatever creative spirits, when you're 3 years old, drops to about 32% when you're 10, that spiral goes like whoop, like this, because of self-doubt and everything else. And you don't want to be yeah, by the way, maybe before I get this, I've been doing research on artificial intelligence and creativity. And there's some astounding results now coming out. And we can share that at a later stage, but it's something that we need to look at. is ChatGPT, is he or she creative? And the response seems to be very, very much so. And we need to look at that at some stage. Yeah, so that's what it is. It's self-doubt at a very early age that pulls it down.
Just an unrelated comment on that. I read the other an article that ChatGPT is more creative than 99% of people out there. So human beings still have the edge in terms of creativity, but ChatGPT, which is an AI engine, actually has developed its own creativity to that level where it's actually now more creative than 99% of people.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question here from Yomi. Yomi, you want to come on? You want to unmute yourself and ask this question in person?
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kobus, for this wonderful presentation. My question is straightforward. I just want to pick your brain on this question. It's an ethical question. What's your take on those who trade off their moral courage for their creative courage? We always say about white lies.
Yeah, that's a very, very tough one, Yomichi. There should be no, what is the word I'm looking for, between moral courage and creative courage. Because I believe moral courage is that you get up and you do what is right and you say what is right. There should be no maybes about that. You should not be look around and say, am I getting any support? And if you don't know, and then not do it. That to me is moral courage. And as I said earlier, be a minority of one, even that's it. Because you see, if you don't do that, one of the things that when moral courage, when it lacks, tonight you go home and you're really angry with yourself. You're angry with yourself and fed up with yourself because when you needed to show your moral courage, you didn't do that. So to me, it's critical because it really comes back to you. It haunts you. It haunts you. Now, creative courage, again, people often don't display their creative courage because they feel they're being ridiculed if they come up with maybe what they believe could be silly responses, stupid, silly, to weigh out whatever, especially in a very conservative kind of environment. And we've seen that often. I mean, Alan will also tell you in these international conferences, people say often quiet because they don't think that it'll be accepted. So you don't say anything. And creative people, even if it sounds silly or way out or whatever, must be able to do that. But that is not in conflict with moral courage. Not at all. I don't see that. So maybe you can give me an example of what you mean, and then could be maybe more clarity. There's a lot of comments. I'm actually reading some of the comments here. We should maybe at some stage.
Yeah, Yomi, I don't know if you wanted to add to what Kobus said.
That answers my question. Thanks, Kobus.
Okay. Kobus, I see. I'm just looking here across on the YouTube. I can't ask them to come on a microphone, but here's a very, very common scenario, especially in South Africa, and it's Annette that says she's in the process of starting a new business, and she just needed to reaffirm these values of courage and creativity. And she says there, I was doubting the outcome. Now, I don't know a new entrepreneur that doesn't doubt themselves in the beginning. What advice would you have for someone that's a startup entrepreneur about persistence and courage?
Yeah, I think we've been all through that kind of thing. There's always this sort of doubt, will you be able to do it or not do it? For me, first, I'm trying to get a long question to shorten it, answer to shorten it. If the essence of your entrepreneurial business, you understand what is the essence and what are the attributes, what are the skills and the attitudes you need to do well within that essence. and you've developed that skills, and there's no absolutely no problem at all for you to enter it courageously. But when you start doubting, it's doubting your abilities, your skills, or whatever, to be able to do what you need to do. In my case, when I started out our creativity, I knew what I needed. I needed to have creativity skills. I needed to understand the courageous to go with it, and etc., etc., etc. So I knew the essence of what was required when I entered that, and I took the first step. So I think that to me is very important. But I've also shared the story many times. I've had people coming to me, saying to me, as I remember now, a year or so ago, saying to me, man says to me, I've been in the business for 15 years. I want to start my own business. And then you talk to him, you listen to him, and everything seems absolutely in place. He has the skills, he has everything in place. And then I say, go for it. And according to my evaluation, go for it. And then a year later, as it happened, I see him in a coffee shop one Saturday morning with his wife and his two sons. And I walk over, and it's exactly where he was a year ago. Nothing happened. So to me, that means that everything was in place. And then the courage to take the first step, to just do it. That courage was lacking. And I think that is what it is. And then you have to ask yourself what I asked earlier. What are you afraid of? What scares you? Why don't you take the first step? That you need to get clarity about. Because if you don't get clarity about the reason why you're not taking the first step, then you won't take the first step. And for me, as I said, there's really not a fear that you cannot conquer. Ask the great success stories. Ask those people; they'll tell you. We should have we should have like with creativity. We often have these 2-3 days workshops of creativity. And maybe time has come for a whole courage day or two, just on courage. You kind of work through all the aspects and the skills and the whatever. I think it's anyway.
Kobus, when you mentioned about the person who was in the same space a year later, makes me think of the Muhammad Ali quote, where he said, a man who views the world the same at 50 as he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life.
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly that. Yeah, it doesn't change. Yeah.
There was some other questions, but we are getting close to our ending time. I'll just mention that Tracy Lee, does courage not stem from the Stoics? We can have a whole session just on that little topic. So Marcus Aurelius indeed was one of the most courageous people, but if you also read his meditations, he expressed in there the self-doubt he had. Yeah. Very much supporting what Kobus was saying. Kobus, some last words before I close?
Yeah. I kind of looked at Dwayne's comment there, which is good. Something I need to unpack a little bit. That South Africans, some people seem to demonstrate massive courage in certain areas, but they lack it completely in other areas, kind of thing. And I think it's, again, one has to look at where do they demonstrate these courage and where do they sort of lack it, to get, again, to the essence, to understand. I don't know if Dwayne wants to elaborate a little bit, but it's something that I will also think about. Yep. But going back to what I said earlier and what I've said many times, for me, everything started those years when I did research on the creativity of children starting from 0 to 3 and then up. Everything started there because the reason why I spent so many years focusing on the 0 to 3s is because that is where the time of the human being where you are totally spontaneous and you show the world exactly who you are. There's no sort of mask or stuff in front of you. That's who you are. So as a scientist, as a researcher, that was wonderful because you get really to the essence, you get to the core. And by studying these children for many years, you could see who you are really, looking at a 9-month-old baby and then looking at the creativity and the raw courageousness of that child. And that's what we're supposed to be. I think we're born to be that. We're born to be courageous because somewhere you're going to need that courage, to to cope with the world out there. So that's a natural thing. Like creativity was a natural. That's again, you need your creativity to cope with it. So it was natural qualities we had up to the age of 3. And then it starts going down because then the world starts to impact on you. Parenting, and because we never train parents to understand this stuff, and teachers are not trained to understand it. So that's how it happens. And at the age of 26 today in the world, it's only 2%. So look at what's happening. Look at the wars and look at the poverties and look at everything else. You know, we don't seem to understand that, you know, we said goodbye to that, you know, years and years ago. But again, as I said so many times, you can get it back at any stage. Your courage, your creativity, it's not gone. You're just not, it's just there inside that needs to be launched. I can't give it to you, but we can give you the tools and the techniques to maybe to get it out at some kind of way. Thank you, guys. It was lovely. Just talking about this and sharing. It's kind of that's good. I enjoy that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Francois. You're a great guy.
Okay,
and you do it. Yeah. And have a look at our conference, because the conference is on, you know, on a kind of a creativity that which is way out there, you know, extreme. And so for extreme, you also need the courage, whatever. So all the topics from everywhere else, all the world, people will talk, and you'll see the best in the world there. So if you can, maybe join us at ACRE28. 28 years. Yeah, it's a long date. Anyway. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. You take care then. Thank you. Bye, Donkey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before we close the session, I'll just remind you of our website address. It's ACRE conference, ACRE conference.com. You can see it sort of in my background. Please visit it there, and don't think if you maybe can attend it. Come and attend this. I went to ACRE for the first time in 2001 as a skeptic, and I've been to every single live ACRE since then, because I get massive value every year from that conference. So please go and have a look at our website, and we would love for you to join us and network with us and spend time with us in March next year. So I'll say thank you very much for everyone showing up. And remember, we're going to be doing this every 3 to 4 weeks, all the way until March next year. So keep your eyes open for some of the webinars that start